Energy. Let's hear it. Yeah. Come on out here. Governor Rick Scott, that's the title I always give him. Rick Scott was one of my great competitors that we had through the years, and now United States Senator from the great state of Florida. Richard Duncan from North Carolina, he represents that part of North Carolina just north of Charlotte. And then August Fluger is my congressman from out in West Texas that knows a little bit about the energy industry. Y'all sit down. I'm going to walk around for a little bit. I got to preach. But we've been given the opportunity here to talk about what I consider to be, now I'm totally biased, Ray, that energy is right at the core of everything that we do. It is right at the center of what drives the economy in this world. It's right at the core of what these three individuals have extraordinary ties to our national defense, and we're going to hear them talk about that in a little bit. But from the standpoint of America being secure, it's our energy independence that allows us to do that. And so I want to tie all of this together today as we talk about why America's energy independence is so important, whether it goes literally to the economy. And I'm talking about this, the next election cycle that we're going to be facing here in November. What are people thinking about? What's driving them? I will suggest to you a lot of it goes right back to the energy industry, the strangling of the fossil fuel industry in America today, the cost that's then pushed off onto Americans, whether it's the cost of gasoline, the cost of transportation, the cost of all of the materials that are created by energy, the wealth that gets created by the energy industry, and taking that wealth and then innovating. Margaret, when you think about the innovations that are happening in the world today, and so many of them are associated to the energy industry, the fossil energy industry. And we don't need to be apologizing to anybody for that. We don't need to apologize to anybody about being for fossil fuels and how they have changed the world that we live in today, the flourishing of the world. And you've got a group of people out here on the left, I will call them, the woke left, the John Kerrys of the world, who think we ought to leave all of our energy in the ground while he jets around on his multi-ton emitting jet. But you shouldn't do that. They want to live their lives in luxury, but they don't want anybody else, Governor Bryant, to have that ability at all. They want to control your life and tell you how to live your life. And the use of fossil fuels is right at the core of this. And our ability to use that for the good of mankind. And I think, Senator, one of the things that we need to talk about here today is our ability to let the world flourish using fossil fuels, and American fossil fuels in particular, because we're the cleanest producing country in the world. Amen, Ambassador Sands. But the point is this. If you are an individual who stands up and say, we need to be net zero by 2050, you need to go ahead and stand up and say, oh, and by the way, if you're one of those billions of people around the world that don't have access to energy today, you're just going to die. Because that's basically what it means. Net zero by 2050 means that you're going to not allow those individuals at all to have access to any type of flourishing. If you don't have the ability to find out whether your child is sick or not with a sonogram, if you have a child that's born with a challenge and you need an incubator, and you're one of those billions out there, sorry, you're just going to die. How black has your heart got to be to stand up and profess that while you are sitting and genuflecting at the altar of the religion of environmentalism? And that's the question we've got to stand up and ask, and not be afraid to stand up and ask. No place in the world has made a bigger difference for the flourishing of the citizen of the world than America, and the American fossil fuel industry has been right at the core of it. When you couple that with our ability and our technology and our innovation dealing with nuclear power, and I know, August, we're going to talk about this in a little bit, and Richard and Rick Scott as well, as we talk about the great opportunities that American energy have and has for the future of the world. So with that, Senator Scott, I want to pitch it to you and let you...
You want to talk about how I beat you the first 2 years you weren't governor in job creation? You want to talk about that first? Or how you got number 2 in the fishing tournament we did with the veterans? You remember that?
Competition
I thought you wanted to talk about that
thing. I love competition. You know, whether I was competing with Bobby Jindal, Phil Bryant, all of these governors that were out there. And it made us stronger, didn't it, Phil? It made us go do some things. You were a better governor.
Because of you?
Because of me.
My whole goal was beat Rick Perry every day. He was the gold standard for job creation. It's a great state. One of my daughters lives there. And I never beat him while he was governor, but the first 2 years I kicked his butt in job creation. So that was a good 2 years.
It was. But I want you to talk a little bit about what you see out there, head of the senatorial committee, and I don't think there's a more important job, frankly, in the political world at the moment than what Governor Scott or
Rick or something.
Senator Scott is engaged in, from the standpoint of making sure that we take over and have a majority in the Senate. And so if you would, just kind of give us a little brief peek at where you see us, what we need to be doing, what your projections are.
Well, I think what y'all are doing here, I think what Newt talked about is that we need to talk about why we're better for people. And we are. I mean, I was born to a single mom, grew up in public housing. My mom would be struggling right now. She'd be struggling. Does she put gas in the car to go to work, or does she put food on the table to five little kids? That's what's going on. So the negative about the Senate is we've got more up than they do. We have 21 open seats. They have 14. But everything's on our side. Joe Biden is not going to get better. Forget him for a second. As I think Newt said, it's his policies. I mean, 9% inflation, which is probably higher than that when you look at price of housing. 11% PPI, when you can't, it costs unbelievable. I said, what'd you say? You filled up your car? Your car costs over $100 to fill up your car. I mean, that's just killing families. And as Rick, what you said is right. People are not going to have any opportunities if we don't get energy under control. And by the way, I love my mom. I hate being told what to do. Why in God's green earth would we go be begging Saudi Arabia or Venezuela or anybody else to be independent? So I think we're going to have, look, we have great candidates. We have every reason to believe we can win. The issue we've got is we've got to raise money. Guys like Warnick he's raised, I think, over $30 million running against Herschel Walker, and we had primaries. Fetterman's raising a bunch of money against Oz. So we've, the Kelly out in Arizona, who we should be able to beat if we have a good candidate coming out of the primary, which I think we will, has raised, I think, over $30 million. So it's great candidates, great environment, raise money. So that's what we got to do.
And I think you really hit the nail. If there's one thing that I would ask all of you to leave with, if there's one thing you remember, you've heard it now from two of our most, I think, intellectually engaged, brightest, most capable people that we have in the Republican sphere, Newt Gingrich and Rick Scott. And they both talked about policy and to be focused on policy. That's what we really need. I mean, we got a bunch of interesting personalities. That's for true. I mean, we do. We've got interesting personalities. But at the end of the day, the American people really want us, tell us what you're going to do to help us,
and then
to help our family, and then do it. And then do it.
That's what you had to do as a governor.
And listen, I'm totally biased about governors. because governors are required to deliver on what they talk about. They're CEOs. They can't just talk. You got to talk and do. But here's our chance, the Republican Party, to really lay out a vision. Here's the policies that we're going to put in place, whether it's energy independence again, whether it's being able to make our country again militarily strong and having the men and the women not woke, but actually focused on how do we keep this country free and keep the bad guys pushed back. That's what the American people want to see. And do it in a way where people know we care about them. To have a spirit about ourselves that basically says, not only do we care about you, we love you, we're going to sacrifice for you, we're going to do the things that you expect government to do. I thought, again, Newt did such a fabulous job of talking about that Reagan and having the understanding of this is what the people want. It's not, here's what I believe in, here's what you're going to do. It's listen to the people, respond to what their desires are, and then deliver the best you can on that, and lead. Now, from time to time, leading kind of, it can be difficult, right, Rick?
It's a ball.
Yeah.
Most of the time.
But anyway, I want to get...
But you can move people down a path, but you've got to move them down the path. We're not dictators.
Leaders lead people down particular paths, and that's what we're looking for. That's the men and women that we're looking for. Richard did a great job of doing that. And you've been in 10 years now in Congress. He represents a district north and east of Charlotte, North Carolina. But most importantly, and again, I'm biased here, he represents Fort Bragg, which is one of the greatest military facilities in the world. I had the great privilege of flying in and out of there when I was a 130 pilot, picking up the 82nd Airborne. And I want you to talk about, from your perspective, why this election cycle is so important to the men and women that are stationed at that base, who are deployed all around the world defending ours and many people's freedoms around the world.
I appreciate that, Governor.
Richard.
I'll borrow this one. Thank you so much for that, Governor, and thanks for mentioning it. I didn't have the honor of serving. My dad served, a lot of my family served. One of my cousins retired and is now instructing out there, and I see this as my chance to serve these men and women and their families. So thank you to all of you who've served and all of you in the room who've served. And I'll tell you one thing, it's kind of a tangent, but these military families are suffering right now. I mean, inflation is hitting them really hard. And, we don't pay them nearly as much as they deserve. And so they're struggling too. But the real key is you look at what happened in Afghanistan. To me, one of the most embarrassing, saddest chapters in our history, the way we withdrew from Afghanistan with dishonor. We left behind American citizens, and the administration just lied about it. Joe Biden and his people absolutely lied about it. They said every American that wanted to get out is out. But what they didn't tell you is August came up and said, okay, I'm here with my family. And said, we'll take you, but we're not taking your wife and kids. And he said, well, I can't do that. They go, okay, check. He didn't want to leave. There were thousands of American citizens left behind, and there were tens of thousands of people who'd helped us. And so I represent the epicenter of the universe, Fort Bragg, 53,000 soldiers and 20,000 civilians working there. I got a call from probably, I don't know what percent, but a huge percent of the folks there, because they all know someone who helped them when they were serving over there. And so at one point we had a list of about 30,000 people we were trying to get out of the country that this administration left behind. And it's just shameful. And we've had service members commit suicide over it because they made a promise to someone and it wasn't kept. And it's shameful. And you look at these Green Berets that we're going to deploy in the future, and we're going to have them go into a country and say, trust us. If you help me, we won't forget you. It puts the lives of these men and women in danger. So having a commander-in-chief who respects our military, who loves our military like these leaders did when they were governors and now in their current roles, is critical. And so we've got to get a new president.
Yeah. Amen.
I kind of like the old president.
Amen.
Because he loved our military.
Hey, Richard, we behind the stage, we were talking a little bit about small modular reactors and why I'm a huge fan that we've got to push the envelope on our nuclear power in this country for a lot of reasons. Number one, because it's such a reliable base load. It's emission-free. It's walk-away safe now. We don't have the waste issues that we had in the past. And the modern technology on small modular reactors, advanced reactors, however you want to call them, is very important. And it's got an application for the military. And if you and Representative Fluger would just touch on that a little bit about the potential of that type of technology, and maybe pushing the envelope even a little bit further and talking about how states could take the lead on the permitting and the licensing of those instead of having to sit around and wait for Mother May I in Washington, D.C. to say, oh, it's okay for you to do that.
Well, I'll touch those quickly and let August jump in. But the last point you made, though, is the critical point. I mean, we talk about all these things we can do to make people's lives better. We're not talking theory. All we have to do is point to the last president and what he did for people and how he made their lives better through his policies. One great example is through permitting regulations to unleash business, particularly in the energy sector. You, as Secretary, did a fabulous job on NEPA, on Clean Air Act, on WOTUS, on the Endangered Species Act. All these different regulations got to the point that they weren't doing any good anymore. They were just laying regulation on top of regulation, and you and President Trump rolled back these regulations and unleashed American innovation. And what the left doesn't want you to know is the United States leads the world in reducing emissions. In the last 20 years, we've reduced emissions in this country more than the next 12 best countries combined. And how do we do it? It wasn't a government mandate. It was because of innovation through the private sector. It's unleashing the private sector, and they'll figure it out. When it comes to small modular nuclear reactors, this is the future, in my opinion. Nuclear, the left, for some reason, doesn't like it. It's 95% carbon-free. It's base load. It's the cleanest, safest, most reliable source of energy we've got. But the new small modular nuclear reactors, they're smaller. That's part of the name. But they also are safer. They have this special fuel, HALEU fuel. And I'll let August explain the scientific context of that. But it is enriched to a lower level, so it's safer. You can turn these reactors on and off, and they don't melt down. You can't upgrade the fuel into weapons-grade fuel. They're great. You can move them around. 3 of these reactors could power Fort Bragg with enough excess that if we got into some kind of national crisis, they could export that energy out into North Carolina and South Carolina. What I'd like to see, and I took, when you left office, your successor came down to Fort Bragg to look at this issue because, we lost a whole lot of lives in Afghanistan and Iraq from IEDs. Why is that? It's because we're shipping diesel fuel up and down the road to get them to the troops. What if we deployed 82nd Airborne with their own nuclear reactor? They could go to the middle of the desert and be self-contained. These are the kind of future applications that I think are limitless. But I'll kick it over to August and stop talking.
Let me do a quick little introduction of August Fluger for just a second, because I think this is really important. He graduated from, well, number one, just for the purposes of being completely honest here, he could not get into Texas A&M, so he had to, he took his second choice and went to the Air Force Academy, but, I'm just kidding, sort of. He graduated in 2000. About a week before 9/11, he got his wings at Laughlin Air Force Base in Del Rio, Texas. He was one of the United States Air Force and America's next generation of fighter pilot. He's been in conflict his entire military and political career. This guy understands the price that generation has paid. And having an individual like August in Congress is really important, so that when they sit in front of a committee that's got a woke Secretary of Defense and really ask them hard questions about what are you doing and why are you doing it, having somebody like August Fluger is really important for our team to have there asking those kind of questions. And so, August, I'm really proud to have you as my congressman and working for us, and thank you for your selfless service throughout all these years, the last 2 decades. God bless you.
Well, I will say that I did marry an Aggie, and that puts me into a higher category. Mr. Secretary, I think, first off, thank you, and to Brooke Rollins for the leadership here. I mean, this is such an important topic. I'm going to go back to something that was said by, I think, everybody on this panel, and that is unleashing innovation, unleashing American ingenuity. And this president, and I grade him on 2 simple things, very, very simple. Is he making us more prosperous, and is he making us more secure? And it is unequivocal to both of those. Absolutely not. He is not making us more prosperous or secure. And it's because he's stifling this innovation. I represent a district. Any Texans in here that know where Midland, Texas is? Midland over Moscow is that is my signature piece of legislation. And it's not just a catchy phrase. I gave the secretary a hat. But it's what the president is against. He's against the American dream. He's against innovation. He's against unleashing American energy, and it hurts our military. It hurts our economy. It didn't have to be this way. It did not have to be this way. And whether it's small modular nuclear reactors, or whether it's taken the energy out of the Permian Basin and not having to go beg for it from MBS or Maduro or any of these other leaders, we have to remember that in World War II, American fossil fuel industry was the tipping point that pushed us over the edge and allowed us to win that conflict and win freedom for this world. And now here we are, and every American family is hurting at the pump. They're hurting at the grocery store. They're hurting paying the bills. Some of the electrical companies are saying that 1 in 5 Americans are going to get disconnect notices this year. How sad is that? The people that can afford it the least are the ones that are going to have to pay the most. And when it comes to the innovation and the ingenuity, we need a president who's going to stand up for us, just like the secretary did when he was Secretary of Energy and Governor of Texas, saying we can do this more inexpensive, we can do it cleaner, and the underpinning of our economy comes from energy. Let me give you a quick stat here. In the next 15 to 20 years, and this is a conservative estimate, 1 billion people will be added to this earth. 1 billion people. I'm tired of hearing the word energy transition. Those billion people will demand 50% more electricity than is currently being demanded today. We are in an energy expansion. And we have to do everything we possibly can, whether it's small modular reactors, whether it's LNG, and the Secretary has done a wonderful job abroad telling our partners and our allies who we want them to rely on us and not go to Russia. We want Zelensky to be able to say, you know what, the United States is reliable, and we're going to get that energy from them, not from the Russians, not from the Chinese, not from the Iranians, so on and so forth. Those billion people who now will have access to clean, inexpensive, reliable energy, we can't go backwards. But that's what this president is doing to us. It is time to put Midland over Moscow, and it's time to put America first and use the resources that we are so blessed with right here in this country.
Well done. Well done. Rick Scott, from the standpoint of if you were just to give some advice to a Senate candidate that's out there who's looking at you as a successful governor, a successful senator, the head of the senatorial committee, and if they were just to sit down one-on-one with you and say, Senator, give me some advice on how I need to respond to and interact with the constituency. Just, I mean, give them a little bit of your philosophy about here's how you run a campaign, here's how you successfully bring it to a fruition.
I've only had one primary and 3 generals, so I'm not an expert on it, but the approach I've taken is very similar to Governor Perry's approach. The first thing is nobody's going to vote for you unless they think you care about them. So I think the first thing you have to do is you have to show people that you really care and you understand what issue they're dealing with. Number 2, if you've had the opportunity to govern, show that you're competent. So actually show up and do the job you said you're going to do. And then go talk about the issues people care about. Don't talk about things they don't care about. Talk about an impact of gas prices and food prices and impact of baby formula shortage and their kids not being taught the right things at school and living in a bad neighborhood, stuff like that. Because that's what people care about. And talk about your background and why you're different. I was talking to Mehmet Oz last night, and we talked about the fact that one of the reasons why I think he's going to win is he's willing to tell his story. Here's a guy that his family came from Turkey. He's busted his butt and had success, and he's doing this because he wants the same thing for everybody else. And how do you not vote for somebody like that? Then, of course, the last thing is, if you're not willing to ask everybody and their brother for every dime they've got, don't get in this job, because it's part of the job. You have to raise money to get your message out. So, but the big thing is show people you care and talk about the issues. And if you've had an opportunity, all of us have now had the opportunity to govern. Right on, show the people we did what we said we cared about. Yeah. So, by the way, it's a ball. You should run for office. It's if you haven't run for office, it is an unbelievable opportunity. You meet the most wonderful people, and you get to hear their stories. I love all the stories of people I've had the opportunity to meet, and then you actually do have the opportunity to help people, which is the most rewarding thing you get to do.
Yeah, Richard.
You also save a lot of money on vetting when you run for office. I coached my son's school team, and they had me fill out this form so they could do a background check. I said, look, Nancy Pelosi spent $7 million doing that last year. You can probably waive that $35 fee. But what was the question?
I don't even remember now. Yeah. But what I want you to do is just talk a little bit about what Rick discusses about people knowing that you care, and I mean, knowing it when they see you, when they hear you. And one of the things that I know about you in my times with you is that you really care about the men and women in the military and the things that you're doing to assist on the veteran side. And I'd like for you just to kind of share with the audience here a little bit about what you've worked with, engaged with, and the difference that you make, and so that the constituents they see that in your eyes, they see it in your actions.
Well, I appreciate that, and I do agree with the senator that you have to show you care first, and we as Republicans also have the advantage that our ideas will actually make their lives better, and so if you engage in that conversation and you talk about what people are going through, you bring up veterans. Veterans, they've seen it all. They've been told, they've been lied to in some cases. They've been told a lot of things. When you're dealing with veterans, they're looking at you and saying, all right, is this guy going to tell me the truth? Or this woman, is she going to do what she said she is going to do? And so I think particularly when you talk about our veterans, they're tired of being told, made promises. They want you to deliver. I think that's what President Trump was so good at. And Robert Wilkie, I think, is here. He's going to be here. He was a tremendous Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Under President Trump, and working in Congress, we were able to speed up the wait times at the VA. We were able to really make some improvements so that we were delivering better quality care. One of my biggest issues when it comes to veterans is I want you to be able to go to any doctor you want to go to. If you want to go to the VA, great. If you want to go to the private doctor, great. If you're 100% service connected, we ought to pay for either. Absolutely. And so when you talk about America First, looking at this issue, I think we've got a pretty good track record of keeping our promises to our veterans, doing what you said you were going to do. Our veterans kept their promises to us. They put their lives on the line. They put their families through hell in some situations. We got to keep our promises to them, and so I'm proud of the America First.
Well done. Hey, August, give the audience here a little high-level view of the EPA's attack, if you will, on the Permian Basin, the Delaware Basin out there, and why. When the president gets up and he talks about, or more likely his press secretary gets up and talks about the fact that there's 9,000 permits out there, and give the folks in this audience just a little bit of on the ground view about here's why the oil and gas industry is a little bit averse to going out and spending all this much money and not knowing what the future landscape is going to look like because of this administration's clear disdain for the fossil fuel industry.
Let me take 10 seconds to thank my wife, who moved with me 11 times. When you're talking about the sacrifices, thank you, Richard, Senator, for those spouses, the family members. They're the ones that are sacrificing, not the service members as much, but the families. The fact is that this president has pretty much kept true on his promise to do what he said about ending fossil fuels from his perspective, and he thinks he's on that path, although it's not going to happen. But every tool, every weapon, every available avenue to kill this industry is being used right now. The lesser prairie chicken and the sagebrush lizard, two species that most people probably haven't heard of. Last 10 years, they've actually increased population by about 30 to 40%. Despite the fact that in the Permian we're at record levels of production right now. Thank goodness we are as well, or else that $5 average around the country could be $6, $7, $8 average. But instead of using a common sense approach, what the administration is trying to do, which is not a new tactic, but the ferocity and the magnitude of their efforts, especially on endangered species, of trying to shut down land in the name of these species and saving these species with what I just told you, a 30% increase in population. So they take these issues and they run with them. Recently, the EPA has come out and said, well, we're going to name the Permian Basin on the Texas side a non-attainment zone for ozone purposes. And this is what it does to investors, to institutional investors, to people that want to put their money in there. I like to use this example of anybody in the room want to invest in a pipeline in Yemen right now? Probably not. Political risk is pretty high. But the President of the United States right now is doing the same thing in our country by canceling Keystone Pipeline, going after endangered species and saying we're going to shut down the leasing and the federal lands and the drilling and the permitting, and doing the same thing with this non-attainment zone, what I'll call is a joke, because they have these tools in their arsenal, and it undermines the investment attitudes, the certainty. It's so uncertain that people don't want to invest in that, and the price of capital is extremely high. Access to capital is extremely difficult, and that's going to end up hurting every American more than it didn't have to be this way. And we've got to get to a point, this is back to the unleashing, where we're taking advantage of our resources. And those countries around the world, think about Moldova, a small country in Eastern Europe that is buttressed up against Ukraine, not a NATO country. Putin wants that country. And Moldova needs a reliable source of energy. And our president could do that. He could do it today. All he had to do was quit the assault, the war on fossil fuels through things like the EPA and endangered species.
Thank you. Do you have the Texas, the national, or not the national, but the state park? Is that in your district? Do you run that far out? And take Big Bend?
Not to Big Bend.
Okay, you don't have
No,
Big Bend.
no.
But we're right at the end of our time. Dawn Buckingham, stand up just a second. Dawn Buckingham, right over there, she is the candidate for the General Land Office in the state of Texas. And the reason I bring that up to you is that she has the oversight for all of that state land out there and all of the oil and gas production on that state land. She's for the production of the oil and gas in the state of Texas. And her opponent is not, just for the record. Just want to make sure everybody knows that. We're for using. She did. Dawn, stand up again. See, there you go, right there with the orange top. I couldn't get her to put a maroon top on, but that's a whole nother story. I want to wrap up by saying thank you all for being here today. What you are about it's not maybe, is about the future of this republic. The America First Policy Institute has the potential to change the arc of history. And I know that sounds like maybe some big, but it's true. What we are doing, what we are about, has the potential to change the future of this country. We are a blessed organization. Let me tell you, I've known Brooke Rollins since she walked in my office in 1991, and she had hair this tall. As a state FFA officer, she came to see her agriculture commissioner. This kid impressed me mightily with that one meeting. I hired her to come and work with me as the general counsel at the governor's office after I became the governor of the state of Texas. I saw this opening with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I told him, I said, you need to hire this young lady to come and run it. When President Trump was looking for someone to come help with domestic policy, I said, you need to go talk to this young lady. This is one of the most talented, capable, intellectually advanced, and wise people that I've ever dealt with in my life. We are blessed to have Brooke Rollins at the head of AFPI. She will lead this organization properly, and the best years in front of America are in front of us because of the America First Policy Institute work that we're going to do over the next 2 years in preparation for the inauguration of a president in 2025 that puts America first again. God bless you, and thank you all for coming out. Richard Hudson, August Fluger, Rick Scott, great Americans. Appreciate you guys.